Good afternoon. Welcome to today's edition of The Coal Scene. I'm Chris Hamilton, and I'll be your host throughout the next half hour or so. Joining me in the studio today is Mr. Jeff Herdholt. Jeff is the director of our State Department of Energy, and in that capacity basically administers and is responsible for our state's energy portfolio. We regularly consult with Jeff, as a number of people involved with our energy industries do, to try to find current trends, various developments, and different things that are going on within the energy sector. Jeff's always quick to respond, always has the answers, and we're just so pleased to have him on our show here this afternoon. Jeff, thanks so much for coming by.
Having all the answers is a big question mark.
Well, we got to assign somebody with
Okay.
that task.
All right.
No, you do. You do a great job. And
Thank you.
We appreciate the relationship that we have, and compliments from all of our members and
Great.
people within the energy sector, around the state and around the country. You've kind of become the go-to guy for answers and different trends, and we appreciate that. And with coal being such a predominant player within the energy sector, and gas as well, it's a huge responsibility. I know a lot of people, as they call us, I'm sure they call you and just want to know what's going on and how how this is going to impact your agency, the state, and with all the issues involving EPA over the past few years and today. I know that raises additional concerns and questions.
Right.
But we're glad to have you.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. It is a challenging time for West Virginia's energy environment.
Heard someone say just recently they were giving a talk, and they said everything's in suspension at the current time. With the EPA was being in the the aftermath of the implementation of the Mercury MAC rule. Sure. And some of those initiatives, and then today still on the front side or the earlier side of new climate rules going through the rulemaking. Right. I heard the person say that all the balls are in the air. Right. Everything's in suspension. We're not sure where they're going to come down, and that resonated with me because
sure, I agree.
As familiar as we are, there's still so many questions, so much uncertainty looms over these rules.
Well, when you mentioned the mercury and air toxic standards, MAC, I mean, we saw in West Virginia tremendous investments in stacked gas scrubbers and low NOx burners at our 12,000 megawatts of coal-fired power plants that are still in play. That's a tremendous cost. West Virginia consumes roughly 40% of the electricity that's generated in the state. So 40% of that $5 to $6 billion is going to end up being rate-based here in the state. We, in that process, in requiring stacked gas scrubbers and low NOx burners, we did lose, or are losing 2,000 megawatts, or six of our coal plants will be closing by, I believe, March of next year. That's roughly 18% of our generation capacity. Another impact of MAC standards is a requirement that our coal-using industries have to use coal as cleanly as our electric utilities. So most of our coal-using industries are converting to natural gas. So this is, in the past 3 or 4 years, there has been quite an upheaval in coal, upheaval is probably my word, of coal regulations. I mean, we're seeing a lot of different things coming out of EPA. We also have, their interest in requiring that new coal-fired power plants capture CO2 and place it underground. And that prevents significant economic challenges for any utility that wants to build a new coal-fired power plant. We also have what we can get into later on, the Clean Power Plan rules that are coming out of EPA that impact the existing, or in West Virginia's case, the 12,000 megawatts of baseload coal we have in the state.
Wow. And I read somewhere just recently again that there's going to be another initiative that deals with further improvement with respect to ground level ozone. And I don't know anything about it, but I just read that this is coming, going to be proposed maybe by year's end, requiring additional changes from both the technology and coal consumption side. We tend to throw around a lot of acronyms and terms that you and I know, but I think are a little arcane or maybe just difficult to put in perspective. If I'm not mistaken, we have, and I just want to go back to the closure of the 6 plants here in West Virginia. If I'm not mistaken, nationally we have about 600-700 coal-fired generating, not units, but utility plants.
Right.
And then many of those plants have multiple units. And I believe we have like 13 or 1,400 individual coal-fired units across the country. 600-700 plants, 1,400 individual units. And I believe we've had close to 400 of those that have closed or have announced that they will close, by year's end.
Right.
And when you think about that, I mean, that's a, West Virginia, not quite as it relates to megawatts, but we've lost probably 6 of 12, 50% of our plants. But nationally, to think of over 400 plants retiring. And that doesn't have anything to do with the climate rules. I mean, that's all rules.
Amazing, yeah, right.
That's all rules that were implemented here over the past few years.
It's certainly an issue that's come up at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission level is how does this impact the security of our grid? I mean, we're in the PJM grid. PJM stands for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, but our grid extends from Jersey out to Michigan. Our grid has lost 21,000 megawatts of coal capacity.
Wow.
And how is that coal capacity replaced? I mean, certainly there are plans. We have plans for one, a natural gas plant here in West Virginia, and there are plans for other natural gas plants. But can we ramp up those quick enough so this 21,000 megawatts lost is not a problem to our grid?
Just another one of those factoids that these same plants that are set for closure last winter, when we had this Arctic vortex, formerly known as February. Had to throw that in there, but we did sustain a cold period throughout the month of February, and if I believe all these units were running, or the majority of them were running almost at full capacity.
Right, correct.
Coal, if I'm not mistaken, picked up 80+% of the base fuel that was required to produce the electricity to produce the heat last winter, and these plants are going away. How does that reconcile?
It's hard to understand. I mean, when you think, well, what the PJM, the grid reference last year was there were some unusual conditions that caused natural gas plants to freeze up. There was also two nuclear plants in Maryland that went offline, and they had a whole series of these issues that they felt were unique and things that would not happen again in the future. But I would agree with you. It does really point to the vulnerability of our electric grid system.
Yeah, it really does. Just how fragile it is, and I mean, we think it's really, really good to see, these newfound economic centers surrounding, the Marcellus and Utica gas shales, and it's phenomenal. And given the perception that we're an energy state, we all within the energy sector think we can, become a much stronger energy state. But we should be able to develop both, our coal reserves and all of our natural gas resources without compromising one for another. I mean, I guess that's the ideal. Maybe that's becoming utopian to a certain extent.
It's interesting to see that our natural gas production has gone up literally 400%, four times what our gas production was in 2001. A tremendous leap. And with that, it's also liquids rich. I mean, we are producing a lot of ethane, which we hope is used in a cracker plant in the state, a lot more propane and butane as well. I mean, this is a tremendous resource. They claim that our Marcellus resource is more significant than any of the shale resources in Texas.
And those are, I've been to a couple of presentations, gas and hearing the technique and some of the inventory. And, I understand that there's every bit as much gas there as what they initially thought, if not more. So it's, there's a substantial volume that'll be harvested or put together. What other kind of trends are you seeing? I know gas is up a little bit. Coal's actually up a little bit. Nothing to get real excited about, but I know we're mining just a little bit more coal, while at the same time we're hearing more and more warn notices being given. But gas is up a little bit. What other kind of trends are you seeing?
Sure. Well, on the natural gas side, prices are down. They're $3.95, roughly $3.95 an MCF. I mean, during the polar vortex, that price went up to about $5 on the open market. There were some constrained markets where the price just went out the roof. So, but we are, there's a lot of new gas hitting the market that's depressing the price, and that's certainly, coal can still compete with natural gas at $3.90, but it's a lot easier to compete with coal at $5.
Well, and I think there's a direct relationship or each fuel has a different economic consequence or value to the state in terms of severance and things like that. I believe I heard Mark Muco before one of our legislative panels, not too long ago, indicated that it takes something like a 60+% increase in natural gas to offset a 10% decrease in coal production. And that was, overall economic value as it relates to jobs and infrastructure and also severance. So that was interesting.
But when you look at this, I mean, and you've seen the severance tax figures. I mean, they're to $300 to $350 million is pretty substantial.
Well, it really is. We actually, I believe we peaked just north of 500 million.
$500 million.
Maybe 2 years ago, before we started the decline that we're still in.
Right.
And I think we're just maybe shy of $400 million today, and that's just severance. That's not, with the
wages and stuff. Yeah.
With the 5,000 lost mining jobs. Right. I believe there's close to $2 billion of payroll dollars that have been removed from our economy. Now that could very well be a total figure, including the Southwest Virginia jobs, as well as the Pikeville, Kentucky, or Southeastern Kentucky, and we have 12,000 miners out of work.
That's a big number.
It's a huge number, and that's where the real pain's felt. Right. There's no question about that. I know you brought some slides today.
Sure.
Hopefully we can maybe go through a couple of them and just talk about some of the energy trends and different things we're seeing here within the state.
Okay. The first, this is our energy flow chart. This graphically represents the energy that's produced in the state of West Virginia. You can see in the lower left-hand column a greenish yellow, that's actually the energy that's imported into West Virginia. That's our liquid petroleum fuels. When you look at, and these figures, the numbers here are in trillion BTUs, a figure not everybody uses every day. But this tries to contrast the different fuels that are produced in West Virginia, coal, natural gas, crude oil, renewable energy. We are an energy producing state. When you look at on the left-hand side of the chart, it's our inputs, and on the right-hand side of the chart, it's where this energy ends up going to. Domestic raw coal is 1,134 trillion BTUs. This is our coal shipments to other states. We ship coal to 23 states. International raw coal is our coal exports. You know, West Virginia is blessed with significant quantities of metallurgical coal. Metallurgical coal is also called agglomerating coal. It's what causes steel to, it's what causes iron to be made into steel. Electricity, and we'll get into a chart later, we're number 4 in the country on the amount of net electricity exports. A lot of states in the east depend on electricity that's produced in West Virginia.
So we're a clear exporter of power.
We are an energy state, and a lot of states would be upset if we stopped exporting electricity and coal. Yes, I mean and people, I guess, a lot of people don't appreciate how significant we are as an energy producing state.
You say we ship to 23, 24 states.
Right.
I think that number fluctuates.
It fluctuates back and forth.
You
right.
look at the map, that's almost every state east of the Mississippi.
Right, right.
And you know, it's either used for household power or commercial, industrial power.
Right.
Generation of electricity.
Right.
And that's, you know, being a major export state, we become a little vulnerable to what happens in those states. One of the concerns we have as every state begins to formulate a compliance plan, you know, per the new climate rules.
Man, that's scary stuff, right?
It really is. It really is. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. If we could switch to the next chart, you can see, and that the graph didn't come up with this chart, but this is West Virginia coal production. We can see in 2002, our production was 163 million tons, and in 2013, the most recent numbers we have are 119 million tons, and this represents a decrease of 36%. From 2002 to 2013, a decrease in 36% of the West Virginia coal produced.
Kind of interesting number on there too is the 2008-2009 level, which was about the same as 2002.
Right.
You know, so you could almost use that as your point of reference when things started to substantially decline.
Right.
Which happens to just been, you know, I'll make the point, just happens to been when this president took office. And
just happens to be.
It just happened, yeah, just kind of coincidental. And we started to see, you know, our permits being objected to, and, you know, a number of other developments. But
right. I think people need to get that perspective also, that, you know, we talk about coal plants, we talk about emissions, CO2. It's not just CO2 that the Environmental Protection Agency is interested in or is taking a shot at. I mean, the coal mining regulations themselves have gotten substantially more restrictive.
they absolutely have. And, you know, we went through the period of there being all but a moratorium placed on new mining permits,
Right.
you know, in 2009, 2010. You know, at one time there was a universe of over 1,000 mining permits here in West Virginia that was in need of some type of federal action, either approval, continuation, reapproval. But we had that kind of a backlog.
Right. The next chart depicts the actual domestic movement of West Virginia coal The darker states are those that receive over 5 million tons of coal from us.
That's interesting. Now, I just want to point out that, you know, as you said, we're exporting a lot of coal, and I think we have a slide that shows that, and a lot of that's met coal for steel manufacturing, you know, abroad in the China and India markets, especially right now. But there's also a little bit of coal coming into the United States.
Amazingly so, right?
And that is just, I mean, it's unacceptable when you think about it. I read recently where I think New Hampshire, one of the New England states, you know, which continues to, you know, be you know, lined up against us in a lot of these issues involving air quality, was receiving shipments of coal from Russia back
Pretty
last.
bizarre. Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you know, the other thing. You know, one thought triggers another, but we're also not into West Virginia, but we're bringing coal from Colombia and Indonesia into states not far from us, down along the, you know, the Mid-Atlantic, the southeastern states, and you know they beat us from a production standpoint. They typically have less of a transportation charge. But the thing that really gets me is two things. Some of these states have zero human rights and environmental laws. In the case of Colombia, they're still using child labor as well. And it's just such an uneven playing field. But to think we're bringing coal in to this country from places like Colombia and Indonesia while we're shutting our domestic mining operations down just doesn't fit many business models.
You also had a recent issue with efforts to get a new dockage in Oregon have been shut down, and you just hope that doesn't cause more of a flood of Powder River Basin coal here.
Yeah, it'd been nice to have an outlet for that.
Right, that's right. That's right.
Off the West Coast versus eastbound. I'm sorry, I got us off course with your slides.
Okay, the next chart it talks about net interstate electricity trends. Net electricity is the difference between electricity produced in West Virginia and the electricity exported. We only consume roughly 40% of the electricity that we generate in the state, and we ship out 60%. We have these numbers reflect the status of all the 50 states, or at least in this graph. We don't do much exporting to Alaska and Hawaii, but it shows the status of the lower 48 states in the electric markets. West Virginia is surrounded by three of the most dependent states on imported electricity. They're Maryland, Virginia, and Ohio. So we certainly have guaranteed markets around our borders. But West Virginia, Illinois, Alabama, and Pennsylvania are the four states, 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the country in the amount of net electricity. It's these states that enable a lot of other states to keep their lights on. It's also a good reflection of energy policy. I mean, you see that those states don't necessarily have as aggressive renewable energy policies as the states that have to rely on imported energy. The last, and I don't know if you want to go into this right now, the last slide is on the Clean Coal Power Plan. I mean, we talked about the Environmental Protection Agency regulations. You know, we've seen efforts to ensure that any new plants that are built with carbon capture and sequestration. We have
these are the climate rules. What's often referred to?
Yeah, right. These are climate rules for existing plants. You know, they're pretty much ruling out future plants due to economics. The older plants are coming off, the ones that don't have stacked gas scrubbers and low NOx burners are coming off the market. So this is the third shot, the third effort by EPA to restrict the production of electricity from coal, and this is our existing plants.
Okay.
And what this clean power plan, the goal of this is to reduce emissions from existing power plants by 20%.
And these emissions are strictly and solely CO2.
Yes, these
CO2.
emissions. You're right. You're correct. It's CO2, and so what they want us to do is literally they're not requiring controls on CO2. Mm-hmm. They want us to throttle these back to produce less electricity out of plants like Mountaineer and John Amos.
Okay.
Literally, reduce the output, and they want states to come up with emission savings in what they call 4 building blocks. The first building block is to actually improve the efficiency of our existing coal-fired power plants. The second building block is to focus on electric production from natural gas-fired power plants, or what they call redispatching. And we can't do that because we have 2 peakers in the state, but we don't have any existing base load power plants, base load natural gas power plants to focus on. The last 2 building blocks are energy efficiency and renewable energy. So we states will need to design programs to accelerate renewable energy and energy efficiency to accommodate a electric generation reduction of 20%, less any actual inside the fence improvement in the efficiency of the coal-fired burn, which is tall orders. West Virginia now generates 4% of our electricity with renewable energy, roughly 2% off of hydro, and a 2% off of wind.
Okay. I know listening to both of our primary utilities, First Energy and American Electric Power, they indicate that they look at this like a puzzle and are very concerned over being able to achieve the targets that are identified within these four major areas. Don't want you to speak for the utilities. They're capable as